Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Camilla. I'm a trainee solicitor in London, and in today's video I'm going to be running you through my top 5 tips for preparing for training contract interviews. So the first thing that I want to say before we get started in the video is that this is just what worked for me, and these are my tips. They're not necessarily going to work for everybody. However, this is a really good starting point. And my advice would be to take these tips on board, but also keep learning, keep going to events, keep learning from other people, keep speaking to mentors about how you can improve your interview technique, and just keep layering upon that interview skill, because it's a very important skill to develop. And I don't think you can necessarily get everything that you need to know from one video, whether that be mine or somebody else's. When I was going through the process, I attended so many different webinars where people were giving advice on interviews, and I spoke to so many different people, and I had lots of advice. I didn't take it all on board, but I took the parts that worked for me, and then I was able to, over time, become a much stronger candidate at interview stage. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 tips. My first tip is to start preparing early. Now, some firms are really nice and will give you a month's notice to let you know that you've got an interview, but some firms will only give you a week to prepare, and the last thing you want is to receive that amazing email in your inbox to say, congratulations, you've made it to an assessment centre, but then you've only got 5 days to prepare and you're literally stressed out. You can overcome that by always being ready for an interview. This technique worked very well for my mentee. In July 2021, we set up weekly mock interviews. So every Wednesday evening, we would jump on a Zoom call for an hour, and I would just ask her random interview questions. And of course, at first, it was difficult to answer a lot of them, but as the weeks went on, she became so good at interviews that by the time she actually did receive an interview invite in the spring of 2022, she could answer pretty much any interview question that I could throw at her very well. So when she did receive the invites, she was ready to go. So she received 3 interview invites and managed to convert all of them into vacation scheme offers, and she now has a training contract at a really good firm. So that's a tried and tested piece of advice that I would definitely advise following. If you're wondering where you can get a list of interview questions from, the Corporate Law Academy has an amazing resource. They've got a list of 175 interview questions that have all been asked at real training contract interviews, and I will put a link for you in the description box of this video. So if you haven't come across that list before, I'll link that down below for you. You should also be keeping a journal of your achievements so that you've got lots of examples to draw from when it comes to thinking about your competency questions and answers. I don't know about you guys, but when I came to prepare for my first interview, I had to sit there and think, oh, when was the time that I worked in a team? Or when did I exceed expectations? When have I gone above and beyond? And I would just sit there, and it would take me so long to think of examples. Whereas if I had kept a journal of all my achievements, and I actually started to do this as I was making training contract applications, and this really helped me when I came to refresh my answers, because I had so many more examples to draw upon. So I definitely advise keeping a list of your achievements, and that will help you to ensure that you're always ready for interviews. So my second piece of advice is to know what you can bring to the firm. The firm is looking to hire people with a range of different skills. So your job is to sit there and think about what skills that you have that you can bring to the firm that will make you stand out amongst your competitors. Drawing from my experience, I was able to highlight my teamwork skills, my communication skills, and my entrepreneurial skills from the experience that I had growing a successful podcast from 0 listeners to, well, we've now hit over 40,000. I think it was perhaps 15 or 20,000 when I was going through the process of interviews. And I really leaned into this to ensure that I could make myself stand out from the other applicants. I also made sure that I had really strong examples of skills that I could bring across from my previous career as an adjudicator and a quality assurance coach at a well-known ombudsman service. So once you've done this, you then need to link it back to the firm. In my successful interview, I knew that the firm was aiming to be in the top 30 law firms by 2025. So then I linked their growth ambitions to my experience having grown a successful podcast and website, the Student Lawyer website, and said that I was a really good fit for the firm because I was also ambitious and I had experience in growing businesses. This is just one example of how you can use your strengths to your advantage. The main thing to focus on is creating your USP, which is unique selling point, and then think about how those skills could benefit the firm so that if the opportunity arises for you to showcase this amazing USP that you have, then you're ready to take advantage of that opportunity. My third tip is to research the firm. Now, I focused my research around three main pillars, which are the work and the clients, the culture, and also the training. Now, focusing on the first pillar, which is the work and the clients that the firm has, you need to understand what the main practice areas are of the firm. You need to understand the firm's core practice areas and then understand the practice areas. So if you're not fully sure about what each practice area does, then you can go onto Chambers Student. They've got a really amazing section about all the different practice areas, which I'll also leave linked in the description box of the video, so you can go and check that out. This ideally should have all been done before you made your training contract application, but if you haven't already gone through this process, then be sure to do it. And if you did go through this process when you were making your application, then it wouldn't hurt to just have a refresher of the firm's main practice areas and to fully understand how they operate. You can then go onto the firm's website to have a really good look around at what sort of work the firm has done. If it's on the website, then the firm is going to be very proud of this work, so be sure to have a good look at what the firm is highlighting and showcasing on its website. I would then pick a few deals which I found interesting and research those a little bit in more detail. And you can also, if you can find out which lawyers were involved, you can even speak to them and find out perhaps what a trainee's role would be in a deal like that, so that if it does come up at an interview, you can talk about it in more detail and explain why you'd be very interested to work on a deal like that and how you understand what a trainee's role would be in such a deal. Again, it's very important to link this back and to explain why it interests you. So if there's a particular deal which you're interested in, then it's important to be able to explain why it interests you. And perhaps an example of this is if you read the Financial Times every day and you have analysed news stories about this particular deal or about this sector or about maybe the client, then you can explain this in your interview and demonstrate that you have a real interest in the type of work that the firm does. You should also research the firm's competitors and find out exactly what makes the firm that you're applying to different to its competitors, and make sure that you can talk about this in an interview, because this could come up in a number of different ways. For example, the interviewer might ask you something like, oh, what other firms have you applied for? And if you are genuinely interested in the work that the firm does, then it's likely that you've also applied to at least one of their competitors. So then you can go on to explain that you've applied to X firm and Y firm, but you are more drawn to the firm that you're interviewing at because of X, Y, Z. And this really should be a differentiating factor that you can kind of pick on and emphasize that you know how this firm is different from its competitors and why you want to work at this firm in particular. So the second pillar is the training. Now, you can find out a lot about a firm's training by looking on its website. They might also have podcasts from the graduate recruitment team that you can have a listen to. You can attend open days, look on the firm's YouTube channel, speak to current trainees and get a real feel for what the training is like at the firm, and then again link it back to you and explain why you are drawn to this type of training, why you think that this particular type of training is well suited to you and your learning style. So the third pillar that I would focus on is the culture of the firm. Now, culture is a bit of a difficult topic to discuss in an interview because you don't actually work at the firm, so it's not completely possible to say that you know what the culture is like. And that's for a number of reasons. Number one, you don't work there. Number two, culture might be different across different practice areas of the firm. However, I do think that you can get a good feel for what it is like to work there by speaking to current employees, speaking to current trainees, also looking at the awards that the firm has won, the diversity and inclusion initiatives, and any other initiatives that the firm is running. Again, make sure to link it back to yourself and explain why these initiatives are important to you and why you want to work at the firm because of those initiatives. My fourth tip is to be confident. I know that's easier said than done, especially if you're not a naturally confident person, and it's going to take time to develop confidence if you're not naturally confident. However, I do firmly believe that confidence can be developed. And one of the ways that you can develop confidence is by being ready for an interview. If you're always ready for an interview and you are the most prepared that you can be, then you will go into that interview room feeling so much more confident than if you had gone in half prepared, run out of time, and just, hoping for the best. That's just a recipe for insecurity, in my opinion. So if you can be prepared, then if you're anything like me, you'll be so much more confident. Book in some mock interviews with your mentor if you have one. If you don't have one, get one. There are lots of organisations such as the Student Lawyer and Grow Mentoring who aim to pair aspiring lawyers with mentors. So if you don't have a mentor, please go and find one and book in some mock interviews, because the more practice that you can get, the more confident that you will be on the day of the real interview. Another great way to develop confidence is through writing affirmations. This is something that I did when I wanted to become more confident. It's not something that I had previously done, but I'd read a lot about affirmations and the power of them, and I thought, well, if it could make me even 2% or 5% more confident, then it's worth doing. It only takes a few minutes a day. So I started writing affirmations in the morning and in the evening to reprogram my inner dialogue, to say to myself that I'm confident, I'm a trainee solicitor, and that, just positive affirmations about myself. And that really helped me to have self-belief and self-confidence, which I do think made a huge difference. So I definitely recommend it to anyone out there who, like me, perhaps struggled a little bit with confidence in the beginning. And then my final tip is to be yourself. I remember when I first started going through the process of applying for training contracts, I thought that I had to mold myself into this trainee solicitor mold, which I don't even really know what that was, but safe to say it's not a good idea to try and pretend to be anyone else than who you actually are, because firstly it comes across as disingenuous. I think the interviewers can tell when you're not being yourself. You come across as more nervous, and it's just very draining. So please do not try to be anyone other than yourself. You don't know who the firm is looking for. And the worst thing that you can do is to pretend to be somebody else, not get the job, and then wonder what would have happened if I was just myself. Maybe they would have absolutely loved you and given you the training contract. So definitely be yourself. The worst thing you can do is pretend to be somebody else and then get the job, and then later down the line find that you're miserable because your personality does not suit the firm. I believe that there's a firm out there for everybody, and if you've been invited to an interview, you are good enough for a training contract. You will get more interviews, and sometimes it's just a case of it not being the right firm for you in terms of maybe personality fit or culture. If you keep working hard, making applications, becoming 1% better with each application, and don't give up, then I firmly believe that you will find the right firm for you. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please do give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more tips and tricks from me in future videos. Please also leave me a comment if you have any questions, and share this video with someone who you think would find the tips helpful. Best of luck in your search for a training contract in 2023, or whatever year it is that you're watching this video. Until next time, goodbye.